You raise an issue there. It's coming more and more frequent, coming across my desk anyway, and I presume every other elected member here, where a person, an advisor or a consultant, whatever, hasn't got in the paperwork on time, or for some reason the paperwork was submitted by the farmer to the consultant or the advisor and it never got to where it should get. I fully accept what you're saying, and like we have cases where there's legal cases going on between farmers and their advisors, and whichever it is, whether it is private or public, at the end of the day, tis the farmer isn't getting paid. I don't know how the appeals body is going to cater for that, because like, that's an error before the application ever gets on the table. And there's more and more of it happening. I accept fully it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And I suppose, you know, we're going to have 50,000 farmers now in acres. The amount of people that's out there to do the work is limited, and it's going to put more and more pressure on the system. And I fully accept it's a huge issue. In the pig farmer scheme there, you know, that there was an awful lot of money involved for individual pig farmers. And I had 3 cases of farmers through no fault of their own. Their applications weren't accurate or correct. And like, you know, there was huge money involved. But it is an issue, but I don't know how we can get this legislation to cover that. Because in my view, this is an appeal, and the appeal is on the basis of the inspection that does happen. But the cases you're talking about, the application actually for the individual scheme never arrives on the table. You know, so I don't know how we can marry the two. And I'm completely not saying it's not a problem out there and it's not an issue. It most definitely is. But like, we're setting up legislation now for the appeals body. And I don't know how we can, and I don't know how we can cover the point that you're making in that legislation.
Well, if I may, and again, I haven't the defined answer to it, but force majeure potentially is an avenue that could be pursued. Because, and I appreciate there will be individual errors, but there's also a collective experience in terms of third parties. So, like, we may have individual examples of ex-advisor down in X part of the country.
I'm not trying to be awkward, you know, Mr. Whelan, because I'd love to get this right. But force majeure, in instances, is, you know, something outside people's control.
Absolutely.
An inspector being overworked and not being able to get through his volume, or not an inspector, a consultant or an advisor being overworked, I don't know how force majeure will cover that now.
But again, who is impacted on it?
No, I'm not arguing that point at all.
Yeah, no, but
the farmer pays the bill.
Yeah.
Like next week we're going to have the minister in here, and we want to get this legislation right, that we have a fair, transparent, independent appeals body. That's what we all want. That the farmer, when he takes an appeal, will have confidence in that he's getting a fair, independent hearing, transparent hearing. And that's what we want to achieve with this legislation. The fact that the application hasn't been made by a third party, I don't know how we can cover that in this, in what we're trying to do here, set up an independent appeals body. Now, I fully accept there's a huge issue out there, but I don't know how we can get it into this legislation, because that, like, you know, the farmer is left short-changed. I accept that fully, and it's happening more and more often. Like, you know, if I had 1 or 2 of those a year 5 years ago, as much as you'd have, now I have a colossal amount of them. So I'm not arguing with you, Mr. Whelan, that is an issue, but I don't know how we can, in this legislation is to make sure that the mechanism of appeal is fair and transparent and independent. I don't know how we can cover the point that you're making there.
Yeah, as I said, unless there's some form of wording within force majeure to cover even what Eddie's point earlier on, that it's not as rigid, and yet consideration could be given to a broader issue that an appeals decision is based on. Because currently the appeals decision is based on either terms and conditions or very limited force majeure. Like, we're all on the same hymn sheet that there is an issue here.
Yeah, there is a huge, most definitely.
Like, some form of wording could be positioned or included within the force majeure element of it that could potentially cater. And again, I don't have the answer, but something potentially should be looked at.
Mr. Gorman, then I go to Mr. Farrell. Mr. Gorman.
I suppose it's two-pronged, Chairman. Schemes have become so complicated to administer and apply for now that it's creating a workload and we don't have enough consultants or advisors there to do it. And that puts pressure on. Mistakes have been made. If schemes were less complicated, it would probably help. No, it's not part of this remit of the appeals, but whether we like it or not, we are where we are on this now, and it's not just good enough that if you have a problem with an application when it goes into the department, that their answer to you is, well, go back to your consultant, he's insurance to cover a mistake, and basically sue your consultant who's doing work for you. That's the answer being given back to farmers, and we've...
Yeah, and I accept all that fully, but I suppose I'm here as chair of this committee, and
I suppose we're trying to tease it out between us.
Yeah, but we're trying to get legislation in place that's going to make the appeals process transparent and independent. And I accept fully the issue, but I just don't know how it can be incorporated into what we're trying to do here. Mr. Farrell, and then to Mr. Smith. Mr. Farrell.
Thanks, Chairman. No, just to follow on there from previous speakers, just I suppose just referred to here earlier on, is simplicity, and it's the complications of the whole lot, and it's generally when it's new schemes, and that's what we are finding. It happened there with the SCEP, it happened with different schemes, where planners didn't really want to do it because there's liability going to fall back on them, yes. And where it was happening. So terms and conditions has brought on a lot of this issue, and people doesn't realise that they're into it, and maybe in some cases they left the trust in the planner to do it. But we found there this year, 2023 in particular, the IT system was overloaded, and the planners couldn't go in and follow up whether the thing was accepted or where it was in. So there's a limbo then until they went to look up at payments or something else and they realised they weren't in. So this caused a big void, and still is, because they're not able to follow up on the payment or actions, or whether they got were getting query letters or different things. Or other years that planner will be on top of that and able to do it, not just on the application, but on follow-ups. And that's what we've seen as a big issue here, and it has been the whole year through. So that's somewhere we need to look at this, that the IT system, if the planner is looking after your business, well, they should have access to that the whole way through. And that's what we need to have. And there is other issues there where planners can't access information there, and it's blocking them from doing things. So we need to be a more openness there, because they are nominated and paid by us as representatives.
You know, I'm repeating myself now and again. I'm not disagreeing with one thing you're saying, but I said the purpose of today is to make sure we get this legislation on the appeals body into the module that we want. Mr. Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Just in relation to this point, I think there's probably two issues that could help it. I think in the case of a record or a form that hasn't been submitted by an agent, if there has been a previous year, say for instance a record 3 movement had been submitted in a previous year, that a reminder is given if it's within a certain deadline of it coming up, so it's before it gets even to the appeal section. Okay, I think there could be more work done on that in terms of the actual reminder. Like the form is usually in by, say, the end of October. If it's coming by the last week in October and it hasn't been submitted, that there's a reminder sent out. I know that won't be perfect every time. Okay, but I think it's something that might help less appeals get to the appeals process. And then I actually think that this review panel will probably ultimately deal with a lot of those agent issues, okay, where, you know, it's very much overworked, that it maybe wasn't submitted or was submitted and got lost. And then that's where the farmer, I suppose the farmer representative on the appeals panel is able to look at the merits of this, and every case will be different. Obviously, it'd be very hard to legislate for it, but I think if you have more practical experience on that appeal board and that review panel, I think that makes it so much easier for a correct decision to be made. Thanks.
Okay. I suppose, as I said, we have the minister in here next Thursday morning. And, you know, I would, welcome suggestions from today's meeting. I suppose very pointed amendments as to exactly what we want. Like, I've been listening closely here today. The independence of the membership of the board is, I suppose, critical. The time frame of the appeal again was an issue that was constantly raised. I think a very good point also was made about force majeure and the definition of force majeure, and broadening it out. I suppose, you know, thinking back on past experiences, you know, we have a TB appeals board there that, you know, has been operating for a number of years, and, you know, and there is far more representatives on that. And, you know, while I think, you know, most that's obviously to do with valuations and live valuations and the process to be able to appeal them. But I think that board has you know, has worked over a long number of years. So I think we should be looking to that. But, you know, we've got your submissions today from the 4 organisations, and as I said, this is something that we've been waiting for I suppose the commitment was given on this, I suppose, near on a decade ago, definitely 7 or 8 years ago. When it gets through pre-legislative scrutiny here next week, hopefully, you know, that this legislation, I'm fairly certain, will be pushed forward very, very rapidly. So I would just say to the 4 organisations, you know, we've heard what you've been saying today. You know, we will be putting amendments together as individuals for the Minister here next Thursday morning. But I would suggest if any want to make contact with any member of the committee during the next week, you know, to frame amendments for that meeting, we would most welcome it. As I said, I think, you know, farmers on the ground out there have been waiting for this for a long time, and I think, you know, it would be it's essential that we get it right at this opportunity. And I'm dealing with an individual case at the moment where a farmer's fertiliser and feed dockets weren't submitted for nitrates, and you know, a very big single farm payment involved, and he's lost 2 years' payments because he lost his membership of delegation, or his delegation rights for 2 years. But now he's starting on the 1st of January 2024, and his agent had to pay up the 2 years that was lost, which again is putting significant pressure on an agent. But the multiplier effect on penalties, the department won't take it away, even though his agent has paid has paid up his single farm payment, etc., for the 2 years in question, 2022 and 2023. But if he has another inspection in 2024 and there's something found wrong, the multiplier effect of the mistake that was made by his agent is going to come back on the farmer. And like, I'm after banging my head very hard trying to get the department to say, well, he's starting with a clean slate on 1st of January 2024. But I have to say I have failed irrecoverably and I'm getting nowhere with it. So if he has an inspection, and whether it is a bit of farmyard manure in a wrong place or whatever, a water tank too near a water course or whatever, and he gets another 1 or 3% penalty, it's multiplied by the 2 years where he didn't, where his agent forgot to submit his documentation. So, like, we're dealing with him, and I know the lads are the same, we're dealing with him every day. So if we can do something on that enforcement mature and try and get that into legislation, I'd welcome the thoughts of all the organisations on it. And I wasn't trying to be awkward with you, Mr. Winnan, but we want to, when we're going with legislation, if we don't have something that's drafted very tightly and that the Attorney General's office will just say, that's not a runner. So if we're going to put something together on that force majeure, we need to have it tight, and we need to have it, you know, legalistic, I suppose, is the word for it. And this could be an opportunity to broaden out that terms of force majeure, that at least a person would have the comfort that if something was done that they feel, you know, was unjust, that the force majeure, if they go to appeals, will cover their complaint. And like, we have a week now maybe to broaden out that a bit and get it correctly. And, you know, there is possibly scope for doing that and getting it into this legislation under force majeure. So we'd welcome discussion on that in the next week. And I said we have the Minister in here next Thursday morning. So, you know, that's the place where we'll try and get a framework on this legislation that, you know, is what we all want. So at that, if there's no one else with any point to raise, thanks all for coming in. And I said, you know, tis a tight piece of legislation, but an extremely important one. And we'll be in public next. We're in public next Thursday morning, aren't we? We're in public next Thursday morning at 9:30 again. So I'm sure some of the organisations will keep an eye on us to make sure that we're doing what we said we'd do.